on the proper methods of legal and constitutional interpretation. Now, Nick pointed out to some laughter in the room, well, this is no more vague than most of the Constitution, and he didn't intend that as a joke. I'm sure he didn't. Fact is, we all know that there's a lot of stuff in the Constitution that is very vague, very ambivalent, and somebody might say, well, so what's new? Article 5 is no different from the Bill of Rights, the word liberty, the commerce power, but there are some fundamental differences. First of all, we have developed orderly procedures over the past couple of centuries for resolving those ambiguities, but no comparable procedures for resolving these. Second, difficult interpretive questions about the Bill of Rights or the scope of the taxing power or the commerce power tend to arise one at a time, while questions surrounding the convention process would more or less need to be resolved all at once. And third, the stakes in this instance are vastly greater, because what you're doing is putting the whole Constitution up for grabs. You don't have to worry about running away with it in order to say, well, let's see, are we really up to it the way we were lucky enough to have those guys up to it in 1787? I mean, there was a bond that connected them. Even though they differed on issues like slavery, they'd all come out of the Revolution. They were lucky enough to have Hamilton, Madison, Franklin, and they had a George Washington to preside. I don't know what you think about the current cast of political characters, but I look around in vain to see a Hamilton or a Madison, or for that matter, a Franklin or a Jefferson, not to mention a Washington. It's great that we, people of very different views, can talk and converse, but the stakes in this conversation are relatively limited. We may convince ourselves and one another a little, but we haven't put the whole Constitution of the United States on the table, and it's actually served us pretty well. It's not as though it's been a massive failure. We did have to go through a civil war to overcome some of its deficiencies, but I think it's done pretty well by us. There's also a deep contradiction between what some people have to assume in order to favor a convention, to make deep structural changes. They have to assume that it's all up for grabs, that Article 5 is not going to be binding, that, for example, the rule that every state gets the same number of votes isn't going to be binding, and the point of view that others who want a convention for a more substantive purpose, like getting rid of Citizens United,